Ladies and gentlemen, at the risk of explaining something that some of you already know, the whole subject is about Heuerlingswesen, meaning about a certain time, certain kind of social level in the whole farming hierarchy of the day. And when we talk about Heuerlingswesen, it's the whole subject, but then you have a person who works on it is a Heuerling. So you heard here's the word Heuerling. The place he lives, the house he lives in, is the Heuer house. So you might hear that too. The way he fits into the agricultural society in this region, Heuerling is a term for this region, Heuerlingswesen, that you have farmers who own much land. And most of the time that was land that was granted to them. They could rent it in perpetuity. They had the right to pass the rent on to the next generation. Then they could not farm everything themselves, so they would have other people helping them. You of course had the hired hands. You had the maids and the males working on the farms. Again, that had a very strict societal structure within this hired hand type of society. And then you had, once they got married, if they were allowed to get married, if they could marry, you would like to keep them on your land as servants, so you would give them a house to live in. And it was a very small version of a big farmhouse. It was a very tiny version of it. And in this house they were now allowed to live. And they still had to work the land, had to do whatever the big farmer, who was called a colon, whatever the colon said they had to do. Okay, so there's the old saying, when the colon whistles, the hirelings come running. The colon would have these folks now that had gotten married. They live in these small houses. They had a little piece of garden that they could garden for themselves. Maybe a small piece of land they were allowed to work for themselves. But they first and foremost had to work for the colon. And he came first. They had to give duties. For instance, they had to be able to come in and lead horses into the field during the harvest. Whatever needed to be done for the big farmer had to be done first. And that is a Heuerling, the Heuer system. And Heuer, and if you think of the word for on a ship, when you're being hired as a sailor, what is the English word for this? When you're a sailor on a ship, what is your pay called? You know? Okay, in English it's called, in German it's called Heuer, the same word. Anyway, so you're being paid by somebody else to do their bidding, to do their land. So the Heuerlingswesen is also very structured. And this is what you're going to talk about.